Call to order the City Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. First item up is the order of business. Mrs. Carlson, any changes to the order of business?
Thank you, President Decker. Commissioners, there is one change. Under consent agenda, number C, approval of gaming site authorization for the Dunn County Fair Association is being removed due to non-compliance. That is the only change.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Carlson on the change to the agenda? Now I look for a motion on the amended order of business.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Steiner
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor of the amended order of business, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any items on the consent agenda the commission would like to discuss? Hearing no discussion points on the consent agenda, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. President, move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
with a second by Commissioner Steiner. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We do have a couple items at 5 o'clock, so if I move on by them, Commission, please remind me for the public comments. We'll move right into Administration and Finance. And the first item up is the Board of Equalization, the final action. Assessor Hirschfeld.
Good evening, Mr. President, Commissioners. Brought to our attention that maybe our language wasn't quite clear enough, and accepting all the values that after the directive to revert values back was pretty clear to all of us what the intent was of that. But the Stark County Tax Director had asked if we could do one simple, all-encompassing motion to accept all the values, all the work that we had culminated on May 19th, just to make sure there's no doubt in anybody's mind that the work of the Board of Equalization is done. I'm just simply here asking for that simple motion.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hirschfeld on this motion? Any questions on the letter of support? Or are we going to address that separately, Mr. Hirschfeld?
We can address it as one item. I don't know that we have to take.
Well, let's just take the first one. So we'll go ahead with the memo item.
Was there an actual number that we're supposed to put in this motion, or?
I think that's been submitted already. You just want this verification for the county auditor.
That is correct. The number would have been presented at the last meeting, just a final clarifying vote that all the work is done, that we're accepting that value.
I'd make a motion that we accept the value.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Frederick to approve the letter, a second by Commissioner Steiner. Any questions, comments for Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. And then you have a letter of support, Mr. Hirschfeld.
Mr. President, thank you. That is correct. And Commissioners, this letter here, we're just looking to follow along with any correspondence we have with the County Board of Equalization and the State Board of Equalization. Just adds a little more background to our reasoning behind the decision to go with the 87%. And that question will come up. Why did we elect not to go with intolerance? You know, all the language was clear. The discussion was, you know, it was clear on that. But just something in writing here that follows that along. And just want to put this before you to see if it was adequate. If you had anything you want to change to that, or any other additional thoughts that we needed to send along with that decision.
The item that's attached to this letter dated April 8th has already been submitted to Stark County. Am I correct?
And I didn't bring that with me. Is that the Board of Equalization minutes from that night?
Correct.
Correct.
So are there any questions on the letter?
So is it necessary for us to explain our thinking and be so detailed, or?
Mr. President, Commissioner Friedrich, two of the questions that come up when communities or counties have been outside of tolerances, did you present a value that fell within the tolerance to your commission? And then the second one is, why did they elect to go outside of that tolerance range? And so this would then answer that question.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Hirschfeld?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Trustin?
Mr. Hirschfeld, when is the Stark County equalization meeting?
Mr. President, Commissioner Trustum, that is this Thursday.
And do you know what their recommendation is from their assessing department?
I don't, I think they're looking to follow the directive set here, but I haven't heard back from any of the commissioners, so I don't know what their thoughts are on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hirschfeld? Hearing no questions, look for a motion on this letter of support.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Steiner to approve the letter of support for Mr. Hirschfeld,
Second.
with a second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hirschfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
commissioners.
Move on to item B. Mrs. Carlson, you have a first-on-first permit.
Thank you, President Decker. This is a different situation, commissioners, than we've done before. Usually we handle these within house, but because of the COVID-19, we are asking for consideration that you as commissioners make on this first-on-first permits. These are one of the most anticipated events in Dickenson is our first-on-first summer concert series. These concerts are held within the city right-of-way and require special use and street closure permits. With many events being canceled due to COVID-19, staff felt that official commission action on whether to allow first-on-first to continue or not. Maintaining social distancing would be very difficult. However, being an outdoor event seems to minimize this risk. As the state guidelines are expected to change throughout the summer months, it will be difficult to provide direction unless done at the city level. And then also, I just wanted to add that as of last Friday, the governor did increase the capacity and the percentage of gatherings and everything to around 75% or up to 500. So that should be in consideration too. But upon your approval of having the event and everything, then we will go ahead with our permits. And they will start in the middle of June.
Okay, any questions for Mrs. Carlson?
Mr. President, I'm going to vote to go ahead with this here, to approve it, number one. Number two, if people do not feel comfortable with the social distancing, they should stay home. Number three, the people that do go should be able to accept the consequences. It's up to them.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. President, I took a moment to look at the North Dakota Smart Restart Plan that was put out by the governor's office, and as Mrs. Carlson said, they did downgrade the risk to green, which is low risk, and she kind of shared that information that large groups allowed such as festivals, so that is included into that events and gathering. You know, I'm going to agree with Commissioner Steiner on this one, that if First on First is willing to, you know, take the risk, knowing that there's potential, you know, there could be a potential outbreak in the future, I think that, I think it's okay for the board to approve their permit with some maybe some guidelines saying if that risk changes, that gives us an opportunity to reanalyze that permit process. But again, I echo what he says, you know, common sense and personal accountability are going to be important for things like that this summer.
And I know there's other events that people are looking at also. And we're going to have to just roll with large groups like this because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, and there's a lot of other issues going on where there isn't any social distancing happening. So well, I'm hoping that we don't have a second mass outbreak. So, but I'm in favor of this also. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has any comments. So,
No. I echo just pretty much everybody's thinking here.
Mr. President, I move to approve first on first.
okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
With a second. Any further discussion, questions, comments? That was a motion by Commissioner Steiner, a second by Commissioner Frederick. Those listening at home. Hearing no comments, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We'll go on to reports, and Deputy City Administrator Carlson, I should say Acting City Administrator Carlson. You have some updates on our 2020. You get to wear two hats right now. You get to be
Right.
Finance Director too. So
Yeah.
2020 revenue.
Okay, as promised, I wanted to bring in the May results of what's been going on, and so that everything was listed in your packet, but for the public, I just put the revenue update report on there, and I will just quickly go through that. I just want to remind everybody that when you're looking at these sales tax, these are for the month of March sales tax that are received in May. We are always in 2-month lag when we do this. So this shows kind of what the sales were in March. So on our 1% sales tax, we are down by 37,000 compared to last year on this one. And the red line is the current and the blue line is the last year's. On our 0.5% sales tax, we are down by 18,000 on that one. Our hospitality tax, that's where the motels and everything are, and you can see that we really dropped down by 28,889 on that one compared to last year. Our occupancy has been running low anyway, but was down by 3,836. And then our big one, the oil impact, dropped by 328,268 and from last year, but we are still ahead by 91,000 on that one. So June will be the actual 2-month that we will need to be able to start looking at our reforecasting for 2020, which we will put in the budget process, and to go forward with our projects for 21 in budget process. So it'll be very quick because we will still have to have our preliminary in by August 7th to the county. Any questions? I'll stand for
Any questions for Mrs. Carlson?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Trustum?
when do we receive those numbers from the state?
Usually on the 22nd of the month, of each month.
Thank you.
So,
And the first budget meeting is scheduled for?
actually, the week of the 23rd of June.
Okay, so should have at least a preliminary idea where we're gonna, be sitting at.
Right.
So. Okay, any other questions, comments for Mrs. Carlson? Not, you have a senior citizen grant report?
Yep. Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. I just want to report that the Dickenson Senior Citizen Center Grant Program for 2020 was awarded. We do set aside $50,000 for the senior center out of the 20% of the 1% for this. And the applicants that, everybody that applied for this year did receive something. And the list is listed in your packets and available to all public in there online. So I don't have to read through the whole thing. The other one is the Dickenson Southwest Regional Grant. That is for any outside of Dickenson. And then the applicants that qualified and presented theirs also, that is a $50,000 grant. We didn't have as many, but we are looking at different items for a couple of them that did not qualify for the Southwest. We're looking at different ways that we can support them. But both Southwest grant and the senior grant were both awarded. Any questions? I'll stand for.
Any questions for Mrs. Carlson on the grant program? These are just reports, so
Yes.
nothing
Just
that we need
reports.
to approve. Any questions before we move on? Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlson. We'll move into engineering. Item A in engineering this evening is an increase on public bid threshold. And Mrs. Marshak, you're going to be presenting in place of Mr. Kubis.
That is correct.
Okay.
Mayor Decker, Commissioners, the first item before you under engineering is a consideration to approve the first reading of ordinance, which I believe, if Attorney Wenko can confirm, would be ordinance number 1693, if approved. This is to increase our bid threshold from $100,000, which is currently what we have in our code, to $200,000, which would go along with North Dakota Century Code in their Chapter 48. That increase in amount would allow us to continue with purchases of supplies, materials, equipment, and contractual services having a total cost of less than that $200,000.
Thank you, Mrs. Marshak.
Questions?
Any questions for Mrs. Marshak? Concerns?
Mr. President, I'd like to just make a statement on why this is, fairly important. The $100,000 threshold has been there for years and years. And, years ago, $100,000 was a pretty good project, Now, $200,000 doesn't seem to be much of a project. However, I like the 200. As stated years ago, we had a project just over 100,000. And we were going to approve it, and then we were told we could not approve it because it did not have an engineer stamp because it was over 100,000. We had $1,000 maybe. I believe that engineer stamp cost an extra $75,000 for that. So I'm glad to see this was bumped up. A project came 100,000, cost 175. So this will eliminate some of that additional cost for some of these smaller projects.
Okay, any comments, questions, concerns on this ordinance 1693? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve.
A motion by Commissioner Steiner to approve 1693.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion, questions, comments? We'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mrs. Marshak, you have the annual oversize overweight load permit agreement with Fisher Industries.
That's correct. President Decker, Commissioners, what we have before us is a agreement with Fisher Industries, who's one of our largest overload, oversized permit applicants. And due to the location of their main yard, they have to pull a lot of permits throughout the year just to access the interstate system. And so with this agreement, we discussed the route and the type of loads that they would have included in this. And for a set fee, annual fee, they would be permitted to use this route from their yard out to the interstate system. The fee was based on previous year's dollar amounts for what they spent with the city of Dickinson for their permits. And so that's how we came up with that number. And had some discussion with Fisher Industries working through this to come up with this agreement. So we, as engineering staff, are recommending approval of the agreement. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mrs. Marshall? They're anticipating the same amount of equipment and loads.
We're anticipating that. There's a clause in there that we can always bring it forward and revisit if for some reason things change drastically. There's also discussions in there if at some point there's signalization added. We can look at changing what loads they can bring through so there's a height requirement added, things of those nature.
Okay.
So I think that we can revisit if other changes come up, but we're hoping that this will be an agreement that we can set up to do biannually once we get moving on it, but we'll be able to always bring it up for discussion with them if circumstances change.
Any other comments, questions? Now I'd look for a motion on the overweight, oversized load permit agreement.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
a second by Commissioner Walla. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Mrs. Marshak, you have the sidewalk program bid.
That's correct. Mayor Decker, Commissioners, the 2020 Annual Sidewalk Program, acceptance of bid. This is a program that we've done now for a number of years, and moving forward with bids, we had one bidder this year, and in our packet, I included a comparison of the bids from last year to this year, and it was a very minimal change. So that low bid was $255,797.00. So the engineering staff recommends award of the sidewalk program bid to Win Construction for the 2020 program.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Marshak. Any questions for Mrs. Marshak on the sidewalk bid?
Mr. President, Ms. Marshak, what did we allocate in our budget for this program?
Oh,
Usually it's like 200,000, isn't it? Isn't it 200,000?
It's around 200,000, but if anything is reserved from last year, that moves over too, because we had 17,000 from in 19, I can remember, but I did not bring my budget book, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't have
So-
mine with me either. I was just,
But it is within that realm of that amount.
so we would spend up to whatever we have budgeted.
And just to add, we do track that as we go forward, and a lot of times after residents have put in their requests, we look at other areas within the city that, city properties, or we use money that's left in between there to fill in those spots.
And I think 2 years ago, we had 50,000 left over.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't always get to all of this.
Do we have several projects we've designated for this year, or?
The last time I checked, we had 6, I believe, on the list already requesting sidewalk.
Any city projects, or are we pretty caught up?
We always have a running list, so we wait and see how the citizen response is before we move ahead.
You know, they did part of 21st last year that connector over there, so
Yeah.
I anticipate that if there's money left over being finished.
Yeah, a number of years ago, we had an intern that went through and tracked all of those spots that had gaps, and so we really try to follow through and prioritize those gaps and utilize that funds for those projects.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Not, I look for a motion on the sidewalk bid.
Move to approve the sidewalk program bid from Wind Construction.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Trustum,
Second.
second by Commissioner Frederick. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Marshak. We'll move on to Public Works. Mr. Zuroff, you have a wastewater pumping station service agreement.
Thank you, President Decker and Commission. Yes, I have one agreement, one item tonight. This is an agreement with North Dakota Sewage Pump and Lift Station Company. It's to perform maintenance on 16 lift stations and a total of 34 pumps in the city of Dickenson on the wastewater collection system. This is an annual agreement, and they do good work for us. The other lift stations, the newer ones, we are performing our own maintenance on some of the larger pumps in the newer stations. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Utilities Department recommends approval.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Zuroff on this agreement?
Mr. Zuroff, and Legals reviewed this?
Yes.
Any other questions on this wastewater pumping station service agreement? And how long have we've had?
We've used them over 6-7 years, I think, since I've been here.
As long as I've been on the
Yep,
commission, I
yep.
know we've had them for a while, so.
They do well with confined space issues, things like that. They're all set up. It saves us a lot of time and effort in that regard.
All right, if there are no more questions on this agreement,
Mr. President, I move to approve the wastewater pumping station service agreement.
okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Frederick,
Second.
second by Commissioner Steiner. Any further discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Ms. Walla?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay.
Mr.
Well, I don't
Ellington-
think we're gonna be able to get to you, unless you can get her, I don't think we can get you done in 2 minutes here. We have the public hearing in 2 minutes, so. I think we can, sir. We can? All right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is-
All right, put in your auctioneer hat, so. All right, you have a rezone.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. This is second reading of Ordinance 1692. You had a public hearing at your last city commission meeting. There wasn't any public opposition or question to it. It's actually for the Bluff subdivision, 46 acres. It's going to be a residential development just east of the golf course down south. Don't have any other comments that have come into planning staff since the last meeting. And we did receive the final version, corrected version of the plat today from Highlands Engineering. So I believe the Mylar is here and it's probably ready to go. So with that, if you have any other questions.
Okay, this is ordinance 1692. I think the only thing that I did notice, just quickly, let me go back to it. The very top of this says resolution number, 1692.
Oh, the very top of the ordinance says 16 resolution. Okay,
So,
we can fix that.
Maybe I'm wrong. Is this Lindsay and Jamie Stickler property?
yeah,
I'm sorry,
I don't
Commissioner?
think we have the right
Is-
thing
is-
loaded.
This isn't the right thing.
Yeah.
The one we're looking at, 1692, is the Lindsay Stickler and Jamie Stickler.
Yeah, we have the wrong stuff in front of us loaded, so.
Okay. I have my ordinance here, so I'm not quite sure what
Is it correct at 1692, or? Because we did this one, I think, at the previous meeting.
we did have the first reading of 1692. I'm pretty sure it was,
But the resolution wouldn't even be right, because our resolutions have a year date on them, so
Right.
it wouldn't be 1692.
right.
It's really early if it was.
So, I don't know if we just need to fix that clerically. Because we did have the public hearing, and that information, that was loaded correctly to us the last meeting. Commissioners, if you want to go back to the last meeting in your packets, and you can pull up the correct ordinance. So, so any other questions for staff or for legal? Like I said, the ordinance is in your packet prior, so
The resolution.
it does say resolution.
Yes. It says resolution, but I believe it is an ordinance. It's supposed to say ordinance 1692 on there.
So we need to get that.
And that's
Fixed.
clerical. I
Yeah.
think we can fix that clerically.
Okay.
We can go ahead.
So
There was no
anything
public-
else, commissioners? We'll fix that clerically, make sure it's right.
I'd make a motion, we approve the second and final reading of ordinance 1692 regarding the Bluff subdivision.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion to approve with a second. The motion to approve is by Commissioner Frederick, second is by Commissioner Steiner. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mr. Frederick,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum,
Aye.
Ms. Walla. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the public hearing. This is a public hearing and public comments section for 5 PM. The very first item up for public input is the Odyssey Theater. Deputy City Administrator Carlson.
Thank you, President Decker and Commissioners. This has been on the agenda for the last few times, and so I'm going to just briefly go over it one more time. I will remind people that if they need to call in for public input, other than coming up to the podium, the number is 701-456-7006. So if they need to call in. We will have a few comments on here, and I believe that there is representation here from Odyssey. But my report is as Administrator Pascaw that had on this was that in 2018, the city sold part of the parking lot across from City Hall to Odyssey Theater for the purpose to construct a new theater. For a variety of reasons, the theater construction has not yet started. The original sales agreement included a contingency that allows the city to buy back the property at 90% of the sale price if construction has not started within 18 months. That date has passed. Earlier this year, construction fence was placed around the site, as well as adjacent parking lots and sidewalks. This has caused some parking concerns that many citizens have shared with staff and commissioners. As discussed at the last meeting, with current economic conditions, the theater construction is being delayed. The likely start is anticipated in 2021. Odyssey has requested that the buyback option be extended until August 2021. Citizens are requesting the fences come down and the parking lot be reopened. For the parking lots to be fully open, the only option is for the city to regain ownership. A public input session has been set for tonight. After the input has been heard, the commission will face a decision based on the following two options. The first one is to extend the buyback option until August 2021, but mandate the fencing around the city-owned portion of the parking lot be removed immediately and reopened for parking. The amount of spaces this will create is expected to be minimal. Number two, exercise the buyback option at this time and repurchase the property for $90,000. The entire lot could be returned to parking if the commission desires. Further discussion related to site development options could be held in the future. At that, I will allow the public, President Decker to go with the public.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Carlson. I know we do, before we open it up to the public, we do have ownership here from Odyssey, and if they do wish to address us before the public comments, you're welcome to the podium.
Mayor Decker and members of the commission, I would prefer to comment after the public has commented, if that's all right.
Well, I mean, you're standing here, I guess we have some questions,
Oh.
probably. So,
With that, then I'll entertain your questions.
I mean, 'cause that might be, reflect on what we eventually decide. So, can you give us somewhat of a progress report?
Well, if we were sitting at a poker table, let's just put it in context. This is the world's worst poker hand that we've ever been delivered. We purchased this property back a year and a half ago with the intent of starting basically as soon as we could get going. A title problem came up with the post office that delayed that because part of the property that we had designed the building on when the alleyway was vacated went to the post office. The post office didn't want the property. They said to us at the time, that's fine. It was basically a postage-sized stamp piece of property of about 19 feet by 12 feet. But it was a very important 19 by 12 feet that we needed for the project to move on. It took 8 months dealing with the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. to get that done. That blew our summer construction project for 2019. Fast forward to this year, through the winter, we made great progress in finalizing the plans, getting them ready to go, working with city staff on all of the particulars that we're going to basically put this on the agenda for a first frost out start. And that was going to begin, we went through the whole Renaissance Zone application. We got all that stuff done. That took forever. And then COVID-19 hit. COVID-19 took the movie theater business from 3,500 movie theaters open in the United States in the beginning of March to none by March 20th. Devastating. I've never seen this happen ever. It has basically destroyed the industry. It caused great uncertainty for all of us that are in the movie theater business, as well as restaurants, granted, and others, places of assembly. But with that kind of uncertainty, it was not prudent to start the project. I mean, we have large fixed obligations that immediately we had to turn our business to address, and building a new movie theater wasn't one of them. So we put the project on hold. Our lenders at the same time that made commitments to this asked us to stop and not proceed until we have uncertainty as well. So lending commitments, as nice as they are, you don't want to put your lenders in a bad position and do something against their wishes, and we respect that. So as well, we've worked with them to say, hey, we will delay the project until at such time that the industry reopens, restabilizes, the zombie apocalypse goes away. Sorry, I hate to use that word, but it just keeps coming in my mind. Civil unrest that's happened in the last week and a half is just deeply disturbing as well. I think not to just us, but to everybody in the nation. All these things create uncertainty. It creates uncertainty with people that provide capital to these projects. And so therefore, we want to respect those decisions as well. Our business is still not open. We, like any other movie theater business right now, are losing large amounts of money every day that we're closed. And we don't believe that we will even see a probability of being open until maybe midsummer, that is. So it's a bad poker hand. Now, granted, we signed an 18-month temporary right of repurchase, TRR. Nobody would have anticipated this. Was there any ill will? Did we sit on this thing? No. We went through a number of events that caused legitimate delays to this thing. And, we are here today to tell you that we're still committed to the project. Our lenders are still committed to the project. They're just asking for us to see stabilization come back to our industry and to really the economy before we proceed. And I don't think it's a bad request. I'm an ex-lender as myself. I would make the same request. As a business owner, it's prudent to do that as well. Obviously, shutting down the parking in mid-March when, talk about timing, we had MDU ready to go to do the utility work. And you just can't be dealt this kind of a bad card. And we had the fencing up, Choose Construction had the fencing up, ready to go. Everybody's ready to do this deal, and then this thing hit. So that's why we're here today, to tell you that, look, we haven't walked away from the project. We still want to do it. But you do have a right to repurchase the property, and if the folks in town here are legitimately upset, we don't want to be downtown if we're going to cause strife and resentment and people hate us for, bringing the new development to the downtown. We understand that. So we will be respectful to your decision, and if it is indeed you want to return it to a parking lot, you have that right, and we won't fight you on it. But if you want us to go ahead with the project, we are ready to go. We spent a significant amount of money on architectural and engineering to this point, paying real estate taxes on the thing, paying snow removal, paying Choose Construction for pre-construction work. So that's where we're at today, and with that, I'll turn it over to questions.
Any questions? Mr. C.
Could you give us kind of an idea what you have invested now, roughly? It doesn't have to be to the penny in this project already?
With
No,
land?
Without land.
Without land? It would be probably about $250,000.
Mr. President.
Mr. Trustin.
Thank you for that explanation. I know, this community was very excited to see the potential project, and now, as you said, certainly some animosity towards it. But my question for you is, are you guys still committed to Dickenson if the project does not move forward downtown?
No, we will leave the market.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian while he's up front? If
Let
not,
me
okay.
respond to that last comment. Did you say you would not continue in Dickinson if this was removed?
That's correct. The cost of trying to find replacement land would exceed the value of the feasibility of the project, to be quite honest with you. We just, we've done transactions in other similar towns, and, quite frankly, the land is almost given to us to do these things anymore. I'm not saying you have to. And not saying that, the deal that we have on the table isn't a generous deal and enough to make the project go forward. It is. But if we had to go out and source a much larger parcel of land, develop a parking field, parking fields in this town are very expensive to do. We've done those studies, and they just weren't feasible. We've been, cinema operators here since 2011, and usually we get projects done pretty quick. But in this particular instance, it's been a very, very challenging, chronology of events that has made it very difficult to do. With that said, financially we're a strong company. Will we weather the COVID-19 shutdown? Yeah. We're actually doing. We just announced a new project in Aberdeen, South Dakota, where former Administrator Gao went. So it's kind of an interesting. We'll be dealing with him down there. We have a new project going in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, that we purchased an aged Cineplex there last year that we're putting a lot of money into. All those projects, though, are kind of in the same holding pattern that we're talking about here today. None of them are starting until we see our industry reopen and we see stabilization and a lot of the current challenging social events kind of get behind us. So we're conservative folks by nature, and we want to be around for a long time, but we don't want to make unwise decisions.
Mr. President, I have
Mrs.
another
Trustin.
question. You talked about market feasibility, knowing that we have another new theater in operations and they're planning on future expansion. Do you think that a community this size can support two 8-screen theaters?
I don't have any knowledge of the other theater you're talking about, but competition is good. We compete in a number of towns with multiple theaters, so that's, I can't comment directly on that until I would study it, but we're familiar with the theater at the mall. We think it's inferior in terms of the building that we're building here. So if that's what you're talking about, that's a building we decided not to relet. So I'll just let those actions speak for what our thoughts are as far as building a brand new Cineplex with large screen geometry and the things that people want to see these days. I mean, the smallest screen in this new Cineplex that we're building is going to be larger than the largest screen at the mall, just to give you an idea. I mean, this is a major event, premium Cineplex. This isn't just something slapped on the corner.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not, then thank you for that information, and
Thank you.
I will, before, because we have the audience here, but I am going to dial into the number, see if anybody's waiting to comment.
Mayor Decker, I had one other question for you.
Yes.
I know we talked, Deputy Administrator Carlson had given 2 options to the council for a buyback. The one option I did present to Administrator Gah back in an email in May was, until we get going and get stabilization, we would be willing to open the lot back up, but basically relet it to the city for $1 until we get going. So you don't have to buy it back, but all we ask is you indemnify us for the use of the lot.
And I think part of that agreement, too, is to remove the buyback, was part of it.
It was to delay the buyback, not remove it.
Okay. I guess I read remove it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
The conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
I guess nobody wanted to call in on this. So I will open up the public comment section. Anyone from the public wishes to come forward after hearing from the ownership group from Odyssey. If they have any questions or comments for the City Commission, please come forward and state your name.
Mr. President, Commissioners, Doug Pazik, Dickenson Eagles Club. Good evening. We've been going over this for almost 2 years now, so thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First of all, Dickenson and the Dickenson Eagles Club, we're pro Dickenson, expand, grow, new business, and so on and so forth. He was at a disadvantage, speaking first. Now, if this project doesn't move forward, they're going to pull out of town. I don't want to see that, but if that's their decision, that's their decision. But first of all, I think the property is not where a theater should be placed downtown in Dickenson. It's going to affect too many other small businesses in town. I know there's been studies on parking, and there's not a parking issue, they say, but the Dickenson Eagles Club was instituted in 1939. That's 81 years we've been downtown. But 81 years, there's always been a public parking lot, because we do not have our own parking lot. So we've benefited from generous neighbors allowing us to share parking with them. I won't name anybody, but there's 2 businesses downtown that we share with. If the theater comes in, we're going to lose that opportunity because they're going to lock their parking lots. I'm sure everybody knows, we're a nonprofit 501c8. Our mission statement's people helping people. We host several benefits, fundraisers, especially medical benefits. Many of the attendees parking in that public parking lot and walking the block down the street. Without that parking lot, where are they going to park? Where are you going to have a benefit? There's only 3 real venues in town that can host a wedding right now, and we're one of them. Well, if there's nowhere to park, we're not going to have any weddings. So just over the last 3 years, I've been there 3 years yesterday. I started June 1st, 3 years ago. So if we go back to January 1 of 16, let me double check. Yeah, 16. The Eagles has donated $2.7 million to charities, causes, and other benefits in town and the surrounding area. So losing this parking lot will definitely hurt us and the ability for us to help our community. So I feel, and some of the trustees that came here tonight with me, we feel that it'd be the right decision for this to go back to a parking lot to help businesses downtown. Thank you.
Any questions, comments for Mr. Pasnick? Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. My name is Neil Messer from Dickenson, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the business owners and tenants in the West River office condo building, formerly known as the Woolworth building. Before I make some current comments, I guess I would quickly like to review the timetable under which this project and the proposed lot sale took place. It first originated back in 2017 and went through a number of hearings, including a public hearing before the contract was issued and the deal was closed in 2018. At that time, we did bring up a number of concerns we had relative to the project being in that particular location. And we very vocally supported the project because there was an opportunity at that point that Dickenson could have been without a movie theater because Odyssey was up at the mall, and if this project wouldn't have moved forward, there was a chance that we would have been without a theater. That has since changed, but on the other hand, we supported Odyssey's ability to come here and open up, and we just objected to the location that they were moving in. First objection we went to, like mentioned by Doug, was that this proposal eliminated somewhere between 75 and 85 downtown parking spots on Sims, basically, and First Avenue West. The information I was handed back from the city at that point was they handed me a study and says, well, we've done a study of city-owned usage, or excuse me, usage of city-owned parking lots, and we have a usage rate of less than 40%. So we can well afford to lose 75 or 85 spots. What wasn't mentioned was in that same study, it showed the property we're talking about having a usage rate consistently above 85%. The lot was almost full almost every day. And as part of the evidence of that is I went up, I took drone pictures for 5 consecutive days, offered them as evidence, and it showed and it confirmed that that lot was used the vast majority of the time on a full basis. We also stated by eliminating those spots that there would be an additional conflict with people who wanted to do business on Sims to get customers into their facility. Now, on a day like today, and well, when we were told at that point, well, it should be no big deal, people should be able to walk 2 blocks, 3 blocks, whatever, to get into your business. On a day like today, beautiful, no big deal to some, not to all. But in the middle of January, that creates an issue, and I can tell you that feedback I've received from tenants and businesses in the building say we have a huge issue at the point. We've had a 60-day trial, basically, on what potentially would happen if you would proceed with this project on that location. And basically, I can tell you there's been some tenuous conversations with individuals from the post office. Because they show up before 7. There's about 30 vehicles that show that, and if you drive by at 6:50 or 6:55, you're going to see that Sims is blocked without even another business being open, and so therefore that creates a conflict, and it creates the feedback from customers to business owners in there that, hey, they may not be able to patronize those businesses because of inability to gain access to the building. Now, any of you who have been in business, right or wrong, the customer is always right, and if the customer says they are not coming back to your business because of access, more than likely you've lost them as a customer. So where do we move forward from here? again, we're pro-business, I'm pro-business. Whatever we can do to promote that in downtown Dickinson development, I'm for. I think we kind of reverted what happened in 2017, where you took and sold the most use lot, the lot that has the most use, and you should have sold some of the lots that had the least amount of use. You should have put those lots that only had a 15, 20, or 25% usage, because that would have had a much less effect on going forward. And again, we're willing to work, we're willing to be creative in proposing solutions and working with the Odyssey Group. I had a very nice conversation yesterday with Brian on how to build some things and move forward. But at minimum, now realize they've had a 3-year look back on this deal. They've moved forward, they've tried to move forward, but they've really had a 3-year window on this deal. And being in the real estate business, I wish I would have a 3-year look back on every deal I did, because my success rate would be elevated conceivably. So it's going to be your decision how you want to move, what direction you want to go. I think that lot needs to be parking. I think that we should try to work with the group if they want to be here. But at minimum, if you elect that you still want to proceed with this deal, the valuation of that lot sale has to be redetermined. That is not a $100,000 lot. It wasn't a $100,000 lot when you sold it. I offered $150,000 for it, and because I didn't fit the specific criteria, which was designed and written specifically to be a movie theater, I wasn't successful in that. And I understand that. I mean, the motivation of the city at that point was different than it is now. But at minimum, the valuation has to be readdressed in your opportunity or in your potential sale. Again, I'm in favor of having it go back to a parking lot, and if I go through my scribbled note, I think I covered all my points. So unless you have some questions, thank you for your time.
Any questions for Mr. Messer? Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Shannon Golster from Dickenson Dental Center. I just want to add a couple things that Neil talked about. Right now with that fence up, you guys are probably using this, looking in on it as a fishbowl, probably an opportunity to see what kind of parking problems are down here. I want to reiterate right now, if you go into a lot of the federal and state agencies, they aren't allowing customers in there. It's strictly appointment only right now. So you aren't seeing hardly any of the effect that you're gonna as soon as those agencies open back up. The other thing I want to say is the summers maybe aren't so bad, but the snow policies downtown where you push the snow to the side in the winter, that causes major parking problems to where that lot was utilized very much in the wintertime because patients, customers were unable to park beside the streets because that is used as the snow dump lots of times. Those would be big points that I'd want to reiterate. I also want to say is I feel when the study was perhaps done, yes, there were some people that came by our office personally and asked if there were parking problems, but I believe it wasn't straightforward when you were asking us because we were not told this lot would be shut down. So specifically when I was asked, they said, was there a parking problem? I said, no, it's tight, but I think it's okay. However, if you would have put into that conversation that that lot was going to be shut down and a theater would be put up, I would have instantly said yes, that there was a big parking problem. I've already been told by many patients they're leaving as soon as this comes up. If you want names, HIPAA doesn't allow me to say those names, but I'll bet you if I ask them if I can use their names, they'll gladly tell me their names and let you hear them. That's not just hearsay or whatever, that is fact. And as far as other businesses, I'm sure it's the same thing. Parking policies aren't strictly enforced downtown. Loading zones aren't enforced. Handicap, I see people in those that aren't handicapped. That raises a problem with patients too. because some of those empty spots that that parking lot allows are used by populations like that. So I would just like to add that in there, and any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Galster. Any questions for Mr. Galster? All right, anyone else?
Mr. Decker, Commissioners, Mark Grove. I am president of the ownership group of the Prairie Hills Mall. I am also a owner of the mall, and I'm also the owner, along with my wife, Mary Grove, of Griffon Theaters at the mall. I want to go through a little history of what's occurred with Odyssey Entertainment and how they came about. Carmike closed in the mall, closed and liquidated everything throughout the United States. Odyssey came to us in 2012, and they started January 20th with a commencement date of January 27 of 2012. They had 3 years and 3 3-year options. They continued to operate. Within probably 8 months after they had been operating, Brian had called me and asked me if we could build a building. I was working on building a new clinic. I was working on building the new outbuilding. I had a lot of contracting bids and costs, and shot them the projection or the proposal that Brian had given, and said, what would this cost us? When I got back to him, he said, that's way too much. We're going to do something different. I've gone round and round with them on 2 different occasions on building buildings. They came back right before the ending date that they requested of shortening their lease to September 30 of 18. In August of 17, they asked that, and also looked at the JCPenney location to try to extend and make another location. So we granted them the change and amendment to their lease to also allow them to keep a 3-year option. They had till June of 18 to notify us if they wanted to exercise their option. They chose not to. September 30th was coming very quickly. August 11th, I received an email. As you can see, my building is not built. Would you please extend the lease? As a business person that owns a mall, and my partners that are concerned about rent and concerned about the property being filled, why would we entertain and allow them to build in another location when that theater has been there for 40 years? The theater needed a tremendous amount of work, which my partners did not want to get involved with, and my wife and I chose to do that for the community. We were not going to make it public, but there were people that did know that that theater was being remodeled. It was more of a surprise, and it was also to be done without revealing to everybody what was going on. In that same time frame, Brian and Odyssey had approached the college. They got a sweet deal with the college. They got a lease with the college that allows them for tenant construction abatement. $65,000 was their tenant construction abatement figure. With that in mind, anytime you do a lease, you have the detail of what the tenant construction is supposed to be, totaling the $65,000. None of this was available when I asked for it. They don't have any detail showing what the $65,000 was, other than renovating 2 rooms to create 50-seat theaters. The college was supposed to get 10% rent per month. They totaled the concessions, they totaled the tickets of each month. If it came to $10,000, $1,000 was what was due to the college. It was then deducted from their rent abatement. At the end of December of 19, the college still had the Odyssey still had $38,000 to collect from the abatement, even though the lease was done November 30 of 19. They were allowed to collect the full amount of abatement. What an opportunity. I would love to have an opportunity like that, as well as many business owners in this community. So to see them get another extension, and to see them continue to have all these opportunities to try to build a building, and they haven't been able to do it, I don't support it. The other is, Commissioner Trustum, your question in regards to theater. There are 6 screens, in Williston. There are 6 screens in Jamestown. AMC is closing in Bismarck. There's 22 screens at the Grand. In the movie business, Brian has much more experience than we do. But in the movie business, it's about print count, meaning screens. How many movies can you bring in? When you are booking with your film buyer to get movies, you are stuck at 2 weeks pretty much general on every movie. If it's a large movie, Captain Marvel, something big, you're at 3 to potentially 4 weeks. When you only have 3 screens, you can't bring in new movies. Yes, we need more screens in this community. Would 16 of them work? I don't believe so, and I don't think he would like to run that risk either. Knowing the fact that when the studios allow one print count, and that one print count may go to Griffon or may go to Odyssey, we're going to be hurting. We're going to be splitting the revenues, and it's not going to be good, especially after the COVID. There are reasons that communities our size, Jamestown and Williston, have 6 screens. I don't believe that Odyssey coming into this location is a good location, and I don't have any problem if they want to choose to build, but I think that they've had many, many opportunities that are unfair towards what other business owners should be given as well.
Any questions for Mr. Grove?
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to make a comment?
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Decker. This is probably going to cost me some dental work from Shannon. He's my dentist, and probably not make many friends, but...
Mr. Tews, just for the record, you and the people watching, just state
Yep,
your name.
I'm Tracy Tews with Tews Construction and also a DDA board member for downtown. I probably know more of the timeline than a lot of people on this because we did bid this project right away when it first came out, and Odyssey purchased the land, and also we did do the construction at DSU. So I don't know where the $65,000 number came from that Mr. Grove threw out, but I can assure you my contract with Brian was more than 65 grand. So my contract alone was more than 65. But I don't want to relive all the timelines. I think a lot of you guys know the timelines and a lot of the things with the Renaissance Zone and the things that have went down on this project. But the original intent with the downtown project was to grow it. And some of the things I do agree with Mr. Neil Messer on it, that when it first came out, I don't think everybody was privy to what the whole plan was downtown. But with American State and the Downtown Event Center and the parking that came out, and that was discussed, I think Mr. Messer's number's right, that there was 75 lost parking spots. But with the rebuild on the Odyssey Theater, the other 2 lots will open back up, and 42 of those lots will be brought back. Some to Mr. Messer's side and some to the south side towards the Eagles. Another thing that's not being discussed is that most of the lots when they're in, or parking spots when they're in use, Odyssey's in the evening. Downtown businesses are during the day. That was one of the things that was discussed a lot to this commission.
What about matinees? That's the first thing that came to my mind.
I don't know that, Mr. Steiner. I think matinees are probably a movie thing during the summer. Mr. Grove and Mr. Siv can comment on that, but I would assume that, weekends, there's matinees, I would assume. I mean, my kids are old, they don't go to those anymore, so I'm not stuck doing that anymore, so. But the intent was to create more business downtown at night and to grow our downtown. So I think the intent still stays on what the original intent was. I'm also the host of First on First. Thank you for approving those permits. We averaged 750 to the highest night when we had Black Hawk downtown. When we did it at the Esquire, it was rumored that we had 3,400 people downtown. I didn't hear any complaints of parking. I did hear from Mr. Gulster, he's my neighbor, he's quite animated sometimes, that he's not happy with us some Thursdays, but that's just part of the deal, promoting those events. So when we bring 3,500 people downtown, we're going to have some parking issues, but we still didn't get any comments back at that time. I think Mr. Siv would be happy if 3,400 people would show up at his theater, but I don't think that's going to happen. what I ask tonight is you guys stick with the original intent of this project. Whether it took 18 months or 24 months, we sit here as business people in Dickinson and promote that we're open for business. Let them open. Let them do it. If they're going to build it and build it to the code that you guys laid out in the Renaissance Code, let them do it. What's it going to cost you? They're already paying the tax on the property. Or is it going to sit back and go back to the city where you're not going to generate income? You're not going to generate sales. So that's what I'm asking.
Any questions for Mr. Tews?
Mr. Tews? You mentioned being on the DDA board. Have you guys made a formal position on this project? I know you represent the downtown business owners. I'd be interested to hear, what the feedback is from them regarding this project.
Yes, we have. Our president, past president, Christy Schwartz, has issued that she's in support of it. Since our new president has been just newly been working during the COVID shutdown, she has not issued a formal statement. But discussion is that we do support this downtown.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a statement for the record. I don't know what you're alluding to, but I'm happy about first come, Thursday. I don't have any problem with it. I love it.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to come forward?
Mayor Decker, commissioners, my name is Mary Grove. I'm a co-owner with Griffin Theaters, also a citizen of Dickinson. The $65,000 that Mark alluded to is the college contract that we have here. So it's what, when I requested it, it's public knowledge, they sent it to me. But I'm going to keep my comments really short. I think they've extended their time here. If they want to build elsewhere in Dickinson, by all means. Competition's good, if that's what they choose to do. But when they moved out of that theater up there, we knew that the city of Dickinson needed a theater. And anyone that's been in there can see that we remodeled that, we have cleaned it up, and we are going to continue to be a presence up there. And I just want to say that no matter what, we are a local family, and we will be here supporting the citizens of Dickinson with a movie theater. Good times and bad, we are here. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question, Mrs. Grove.
Mrs. Grove, you have a question?
You say in your comments that you don't care if they build in Dickinson, competition is good, but why do you care if they build in this location then?
I think they've been given so many extensions for this downtown location. I think it's a poor location. I come down daily to the post office. I can't find any place to park. We use the downtown on several different occasions. We purchase from downtown store owners. It is very difficult to get any parking down here. And I don't know of anybody else that has been coddled as much as Odyssey has. It's expired. Let it go, buy it back. If they want to purchase land somewhere else, let it happen.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? We'll just wait, Brian. We'll see if anyone else. We'll get you into the rebuttal phase. So.
Commissioners, Mr. President, my name is Maxim Marsh. I've worked at the Esquire Club for 11 years, and I've worked with the DDA on just multiple events they've done. I used to work with First on First in the downtown area, and we're trying to build a better downtown, and I do not see a parking lot bringing more or anything to the downtown. A movie theater would be great. A lot of people say we have parking issues. I come and go from my job all day, every day, every hour, and I never have a problem finding another parking spot. Thank you.
Any questions, comments for Mr. Marsh? Anyone else from the public? Okay, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor Decker, Commissioners. I do want to offer a few rebuttals and some additional information based on the commentary that we've had here tonight. First of all, I think it's extremely in poor taste that my competitor airs dirty laundry up here. I disagree with many of the points they make. It's unfair. We tried to work with these folks. Our science, the types of theaters that we want to build, quite frankly, cannot be built at the mall. And they are right, competition's good, and we have no problem what's at all competing with these folks. Competition's good. We have lots of people in this room and around the communities that compete with each other. We have no problem with that. Number two, movie theaters have been a downtown staple for over 100 years in downtowns. We operate on the hours most of the folks that are complaining here do not. We don't open until 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening when most of the traffic is out. We projected we will bring 2,400 people downtown on a weekend. I want to ask these folks, do they come down here on the weekend when entertainment and other forms of leisure are at their peak and used? I don't think so. The 42 parking stalls that Mr. Tews reminded us, and I forgot about, will be returned to the public. Now, we need those, and as part of our agreement during the development, that we will have to use those because there is no room otherwise to stage materials and construction of the project, but they will be returned. And trust me, if we thought this was going to be a problem, we wouldn't have done it. But at the time, Sean Kessel, myself, and numerous members of the staff in planning and parking studies, it was determined that this will work. Lastly, I'll just advise you that we do operate theaters and have operated theaters in many downtowns. St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, we had a 5-screen movie theater downtown backed up against a hill on one side and the river in the other. So we only had really 2 ways that the theater could go. And we had a fraction of the parking that was here. Again, because we were off hours in the leisure time activity, we never had a problem with that theater. So to believe that a movie theater here is going to cause a problem with the daytime parking is just not true. We're not going to have any parking impact during the day when most of these folks are open. So I'll leave you with that. Any questions?
Any questions? Brian?
Mr. President.
Mr. Trust.
Mr. Steve, can you walk me through, if you were to get the extension through the end of August of next year, can you give me a timeline of what the next steps for Odyssey would be?
So we are ready to sign the contract to have MDU do the utility work, which is going to take down the power lines, cap off the gas lines, and start the communication work after that. Once that work is, we're going to fund that right now. We're not stopping, post-stabilization of our industry. We are hoping that the industry will stabilize sometime June, August timeframe. And at that point, Tews Construction will be ready to come in and put in the foundation and start the superstructure, which can be done over the winter. We don't want to get into interior finishes during the winter. It's extremely expensive to do with heat and cover, so we'll probably push those off until springtime, and then finish it, through the rest of next summer, as fast as the construction team can get it done. So if, you'd say a year from now, it could. We don't have a crystal ball as far as what stabilization looks like at this point. That's the only reason we hedge our bet a little bit, because as much as I would love to think that July, August timeframe, we're going to be back to business, what happens if we're not? It's not a good time to be moving forward when your business is still closed. So that's the only reason we hedge a little bit. We want a little bit of extra time, but I think our we have the plans into the building department. They've been approved. The permit's ready to go. All the engineering is done. We've done all of the Renaissance Zone stuff. We've got contractors let and bid and otherwise ready to go. So the idea that we've sat around on our heels and just waited for this thing to come and then all of a sudden we're here begging for an extension is not true. We've been working very hard for this last 18 months or so to get this done. We were working diligently through the winter. We would never even be here today if COVID-19 didn't hit. So I would like to remind anybody else in this room, if they think that we've been coddled because of COVID-19, look in the mirror and ask me if you haven't been affected by it.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one. Mr. Steve, you mentioned that the building permit's ready to pick up and has been approved. I mean, if we grant an extension, I mean, are you willing at this time to pick that building permit up? It gives you a year construction period. I mean, if you pay for the permit, I mean, that would give you till next June. And if you have the building under construction and it's not done, I mean, you can request an extension in next June to finish, obviously.
I'll remind you, we have $250,000 invested in this thing. I'm not willing to walk away from this. I don't see any reason why we are going to walk away if we have to quote unquote gamble on a building permit until we see our economy and our industry reopen. I mean, that's fine. We'd make that commitment.
Thank you.
Mr. President. And Mr. Steve, has the building permit been paid for in full?
No.
No, we'd have to pay for it once we picked it up.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No one has called in. Commissioners, discussion.
Mr. President.
Mr. Trustee.
Ms. Carlson, can you walk us through the building permit process and what happens when it hasn't been paid for?
When I was looking into the building permit as past Administrator Gaw mentioned that the permit had not been paid, I wanted to know what the process was. So the building permit for Odyssey was printed out, ready to go. There has been, the reviews have been, the commercial plan review has been worked on. The fire suppression has been done. The fire safety review has been completed. The fire alarm system review work has been completed. Work done has $1,366. That work has been completed. The actual permit for the building is $24,506. With all things being there, if you would take off the WAC and SAC, the water and energy and sewer connections off of there, the total would be $25,872. His total building permit, when he processed for the permit, applied for it, the total charge is $41,375. That has not been paid. And in past practices, so that I understood, if a permit is applied for and work has been done, and then that permit, or decide not to do the building, then in past practices, either the connection fees are taken off, but then the rest is either paid by that person that applied for it, that permit. If they're not paid for, then they are assessed on the property. And I feel that for city practices, a good faith needs to be presented.
Ms. Carlson, Mr. President. So that's a city practice, but
City practice, correct.
when they sign the application, does it say that if you don't pick it up, you still owe it? I mean, is there something legal that says that, or is it just a city practice?
That I'd have to get the application. I know that it states on there that if the permit has not been paid for, then it will be assessed onto the property.
Which in this situation wouldn't work very well.
No, because if it would come back, it would come back to the city.
Correct.
But there has been work completed.
Mr. Decker, one comment too, I think that's very important, is that permit, because of the COVID and everything, was applied for sometime late February by Odyssey Theaters. I don't remember the exact date, but it was not, in fact, ready to pick up until late April.
April 16th.
April
It says
16th?
April 16th,
Okay.
2020
And
as
there's
the permit
still,
number.
there's still review comments left out on that permit that haven't been answered by different city departments yet. So typically in this situation as a contractor, we wouldn't pick that permit up and pay for it until those comments are finalized either.
And I honestly, I do not have the experience in the building department. I just needed to see what the building permit was because it's been talked about so much.
They're actively pursuing that as of this time, and Mr. Schwint answered his portions, and I think there was
There would be
some
the
comments by the fire department yet outstanding.
No, it says on here that fire is done.
Work
Okay.
is done.
We have not seen that yet.
Is Mr. Schwint here?
No, he is not.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a couple comments here. I'd like to go back a little bit in history since everybody's going back a little bit. When this was voted on, very first time I was the only one that voted against it for the reason I wasn't against the theater at all. Loved the new theater if that would work out. I was against where it was to go right there. Part of the reason for that was, and I don't know how many of you remember Gary Reddick from Portland, Oregon. It was an architectural firm that the city hired to come out here and look at our entire downtown review. And we paid him thousands of dollars, probably close to $100,000, to come down here various times and go through our city and give us ideas of what we wanted to do. He came up with, part of the downtown event center being farther east here, all those homes that have to be bought out and everything, that kind of got lost in the woodwork. This lot over here, the only thing he had, only idea he had for that was City Hall with parking underneath. That would be the only way it would work, is if there was parking underneath City Hall, or City Hall and then parking, and then maybe apartment buildings or business condos, et cetera, et cetera. So his idea was, you can grow the downtown, but you got to do it going vertical. Going horizontal like is here, what we'd experienced with here, doesn't do any good for the parking. If anything has shown us in the last few months since that fence has gone up, that I think a lot of minds have been changed about the parking situation downtown. Going vertical is a great thing. The bank center down there is going vertical. They're releasing some of the square footage they have for the downtown association for the plaza. That's a good exchange. But, we're just, you let a building put a footprint, you let a footprint like that down there, you're never going to get it back. Now the people that want to go vertical are going to take another look and say, I can't go vertical. I know we had some build apartment buildings above their businesses thinking that was a good thing for income for them. Their tenants can park in certain places. We're not going to have that anymore. No one's going to want to build another business or apartments up on top of their downtown to go vertical, which was one of the reasons that we wanted the college kids to come downtown. So they can live downtown. You want to grow your city downtown. Theater would have been great had you had the room. There's no room for a theater here, and I'm a firm believer of that. As far as no room in town, there's lots down Villard here that are twice the size of what would be available there that I'm sure could be bought or sold. The Dickenson Hills project might still be alive had they had a movie theater make a commitment out there. Would have been a fantastic place for it. So to say there's no place in town for another movie theater, I'm not going to buy into that part. And for someone to say, we got $250,000 invested in here, but if we don't get this, I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. I don't know if that gives us the respect that we've had working with them for the last 3 years, or year and a half, I should say. And now to ask us to go another year and a half into the future, I don't know if you can commit that piece of land out for a total of 3 years in this situation. If we take it back, it becomes a parking lot. If they want to go ahead with it and come back and you guys want to sell it again, I would have no problem with that. Again, I'm not happy with a theater in that position, but, you know, it's number one, we undersold it. $100,000, I'd like all kinds of deals at that lot for $100,000. I think we left $100,000 on the table or more. I know we left $50,000 on the table. So that's my history going back with it. Again, the architect looked downtown. He did not once say, let's spread out more things to do downtown. It was all going vertical.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Mr. President, I just have a few things. Well, first of all, when American decided to build downtown, we didn't hold a public hearing and ask all the other banks to come in and see if it was going to be okay. They're building probably the biggest bank building in the city. Second of all, this is economic development. Parking lots do not bring in any tax dollars. If we sold that lot to Mr. Messer for $150,000, what would we get? A couple $1,000s a year? We're talking a $4 million building being built downtown that will generate taxes, sales taxes for this city.
Mr. Do you have a firm that's going to leave your business over there with 21 employees if this goes through? Taking it to Mandan?
If I may. Yeah, so several of our leases require access to parking. One of them is one of the federal government agencies. And obviously with the fencing going up and the parking issue as it is, I received a nasty gram last week, basically that I've got 14 days to resolve the issue of the parking, or else they will be terminating the lease. And that would be fine and dandy if they went to another facility in Dickenson. The fact of the matter is they're a regional governmental agency, and we're told that they would take, they currently have 21 employees, we're told that they would take those employees if they had to relocate a facility. So yeah, so I'm working diligently to try to resolve the parking issue. My window frame is very small, time frame to get that resolved, but I'm trying to do that and to include conversations with Odyssey.
So there's no guarantee, even if you do find the parking spots, they're going to stay?
No, that is part, I have a lease in place.
But I'm saying in 6 months, they could change their mind too and still move to Mandan.
No, I mean, they had a minimum of 3-year lease left, 3 years left on their lease, so. Thanks.
Well, okay, I'll finish now, but trying to remember where I was. So I understand where Mr. Steve's coming from. I was in the process, we have contracts signed to build a new pizza ranch in another city that was supposed to commence in March. We held off on that project, obviously for the same situation we have here, COVID-19. Nobody saw this coming. We didn't ever expect our restaurant here in Dickenson and the one I own in Colorado to be totally shut down for 2.5 months. But it happened. I also own 25% in ownership in the La Quinta Hotel. We're running 30% occupancy right now. I mean, so I'm invested in this community a lot too. What I see is if we have somebody that's willing to come to Dickenson, spend $4 million, or whatever the cost is, roughly $4 million, to bring economic development and develop our downtown, I think we're foolish not to take it. Granting them an extension when you listen to the timeline of the things that they've had to jump through, I understand it. I don't think that they're making it up. I believe their banks want them to hold off if they're not open. My bank's the same way. They told us not to build the pizza ranch until we know you guys can be open and what your kind of business you're going to be able to expect. So I understand this. I mean, this is what we want for Dickenson. We want job creation, sales tax, property tax, economic development. And we're going to kill this thing because they're missing their deadline by a few months or even a year. With the situation, I mean, if nothing else was out here, if there was no COVID-19, if it didn't take them 8 months to deal with the post office in Washington, D.C., then I would be upset and say they're probably not going to do it. but they've had a lot of hoops to jump through, and I don't think this extension is too much to ask. That's my opinion.
Any other comments?
Since Sarah points at me, it's a hard decision because it is economic development, but yet you have the concerns of business owners, but yet parking has always been an issue and you just have to walk and all that. And if they're gonna go through, once I looked at the valuation of 4.5, that brings a lot to downtown.
Mr. President.
Mrs. Trustum.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time and comments tonight. I think, if anything, it's been enlightening. It's good for us and the community as well to hear the timeline. It's good to hear some of the concerns from business owners and citizens. You know, kind of as I've sat here, you know, we recently, you know, stayed below the tolerance level for property taxes just because there were concerns with COVID and the oil downturn. What we are presented with from Mr. Steve is a proposal of August 31, 2021. What he said today was potentially an aggressive timeline. You know, maybe there's an opportunity here with knowing the significant investment they've already made and their promise to continue to stay within the market. You know, maybe we offer our own proposal. Instead of August 31st, 2021, maybe we want to see movement August 31st, 2020, or later on this fall. I think that at least gives them some time to show some ownership in moving forward to this community. And if they don't fall within that timeline, then I think that we could revisit this conversation. Again, there could be a new commission as well, and they might see things very differently. But it's just a hard decision at this point, and I think knowing after the contractor and Mr. Steve what they had to say, I wouldn't be opposed to giving them a few more months and then reevaluating it after that.
Thank you, Mrs. Trustum. I think to Commissioner Frederick's point, step one is if we are going to approve an extension, would be the building permit. That is a very significant sign that you're going to commit to this community by that. I would suggest that if we want to move the deadline, with the repurchase, that can be addressed if there is a new commission. Well, we know there'll be one new commissioner, for sure. But if there is a new commission, they can sit down and decide if we do give them an extension, say to your point, August 2020th to move forward, we clear the parking lot off, or at least shrink it to their footprint to see how that other parking works. That they could, you know, we can have a couple commissioners right now sit down with them. 2 commissioners we know are going to be here, Mr. Frederick and Ms. Walla, sit down with staff, with legal, and hash out a deal to maybe extend it to August or whatever, you know, is feasible.
I see Mr. Squint walked in. I'd like to know if the building permit's picked up, what is the time frame on that, Mr. Squint? So we have a clarification on that. And in the application, by them signing the application, is it a city policy that we say they have to pay, or is it something that it actually says they have to
with
pay?
any fees with the city of Dickenson, once, Christina, if you could help me out here, but once a fee is generated, that is due. And that has been the case with building permits. Once that permit is issued, that payment is due.
So, Ms. Wanko, it's due, but is it collectible? I mean, do we have legal ground? Is it an ordinance that we have that says that?
In the past, with past legal counsel, we have assessed properties that did not pay for their permit.
But in this situation, we don't have a property to assess. That's more I'm trying to get to at.
Commissioner Frederick, Commissioners, I think in this situation, obviously, past practice would dictate what the city would do in that situation. However, we are in a unique situation because of the situation. I think the city could have the authority to make adjustments or modify that policy if it chose to do that. You would have the discretion in making that decision if you wanted to do something different.
And then the timing of the building permit, if they would happen to pay for it, how does that work?
Like you stated earlier, I was watching from my computer, so just to keep a little distance. But if they picked up the permit, it is good for a building season. Again, circumstances as they are, you can request for extensions. And generally, with seeing what's going on today, we'd have no problem extending that.
So building season, you consider what, 12 months or 3 months?
Based on
in
that
North
weather.
Dakota.
Yeah, it's North Dakota.
I mean, there has to be some kind of timeline.
It's generally a year. Our permits are good for a year. Yes.
That's what we need.
Yes,
to know.
okay.
If you have 1 year, you have 1 year. You know,
Yeah.
we're not going to just say because the snow isn't flying in February, you can start building, or the frost comes out of the ground. So,
And
they have a year.
But from the
They have a
date
year.
that it was generated.
Right.
So maybe Mr. Twos can answer this. So if part of this was to pull back some of the fences off the city-owned property, I mean, would that affect MDU's ability to do the work?
MDU has requested that alleyway that used to be the passage that the post office went straight through, and Consolidated, Midco, and the communication companies have asked from curb to curb because the toll lines, the fiber optic lines, are in the sidewalks. So to answer your question, if we'd pull back the fence, we'd be good with MDU. But when it comes to Midco, Consolidated, and CenturyLink, we'd have to go from curb to curb.
So that drive-through for the post office would be closed for a period of time as well?
The drive-through to the post office will never be closed because the new easement that Brian has worked out has taken it to the east, and that's the Jersey barriers. That's what the post office required him to do.
Okay.
And that's what we worked out with Mr. Kubis.
When you talk curb to curb, you're talking east to west then?
East to west.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. President.
Mr. Steve.
I just wanted to offer a couple other comments. We do have a temporary construction easement that has been negotiated with the city attorney and ourselves and you folks that you approved. That's part of this. So once and if we extend this, that would still be valid. So you'd probably want to take a look at that. That said, given current circumstances, it's not our intent to keep this thing locked down. We will open it up. And I've told Mr. Messer, to alleviate his issues, we will work with him. We will get parking for his people until we get this thing, we can get this show on the road. This is, again, these are just unprecedented times. I mean, I don't think any of us can ever imagine thinking a couple years ago we'd be standing talking about the issues at hand, but we are. We will get parking for the folks as fast as we can. We do have to get the work with MDU going for sure. Tracy, Mr. Twos is right. We have issues with the fiber optic issues, and the sidewalks are going to have to come out for that. That stuff will probably happen later this summer, though. But I think we can bring back and open up a good portion of that parking lot right now, where we're not going to have work going on, at least right away. And to Mr. Fredericks, your point, we will go down. If this is extended, I will instruct Mr. Twos to go down and sign the permit, pull it, and pay for it, and send me the bill. Thank you.
Mr. President, Commissioners, just one final comment. Based on some of the comments that have been made, if the city were to make the decision to extend, I think there needs to be some serious discussion about that extension not waiving the right to repurchase. because at some point, there could be an implied moving forward that you're waiving that right to repurchase by granting a potential extension. So that would be a conversation that would have to be had with the city and Odyssey, that you'd want to reserve that right to be able to do that in the event the extension is given and no progress is made. So just be mindful of that if you decide to move forward. That is something to keep in the back of your mind, to reserve that right.
And in reading the purchase agreement, I mean, what's the trigger for construction start? I mean, it's awfully vague. It just says the start of construction. What is that?
Correct, Commissioner Frederick. In reviewing the agreement that was put together a couple years ago, and I had to go back and look at it for the first time, you're right, it is vague. It just identifies construction. I think that if Odyssey's here, they're willing to negotiate and renegotiate some of those terms, that it would be an opportunity for the city to sit down with them and define exactly what that means, to give the city more assurance that those exact parameters have to be met so that there is no confusion. But I think with the lack of a definition, we have to look at what construction is and the common sense of construction. A hole in the ground, MDU coming in and putting in some construction might foot the bill. We might also want to get Engineer Kubis involved in that conversation too, as the city engineer.
Mr. President.
Mr. Steiner.
I have an idea. I think we need to move off the ball here. It would be my intention to offer a motion, subjective here, if not done, to repurchase the property back. If it passes, fine, we know where we're at. If it doesn't pass, sounds like there's a lot of other ideas. I think if it doesn't pass, those people that think there's ideas say, let's table this for whatever, 2 weeks, whatever you think you need, and then come up with a new requirements for these individuals. Because I don't think we can sit here tonight and hammer a building permit requirements together. I think it needs to have some time. You need to sit down with our city attorney and so on. So to get this moving, otherwise we're going to be here all night. And if I'm reading things properly here, I guess I'm not going to say I'll read it. But with that, if you're ready, I would make a motion. If
Are there any other comments, commissioners? Do you have any before Mr. Steiner's?
Okay, I'd move that we repurchase the property back.
We have a motion to initiate the clause and repurchase the property.
Second.
And there is a second. So for those of you watching at home, we have Commissioner Steiner with the motion to repurchase. The second is Commissioner Trustum. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
No.
Ms. Walla.
No.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Will you start the process, Ms. Winko? Okay, we have another public hearing. I don't know how many are here, but State Avenue striping, public hearing. Mrs. Marshak.
President Decker, Commissioners, for this item, I'd like to invite Andrew Shank from Highlands Engineering, who put the plans together, to speak on engineering's behalf about the project.
Schrank.
Thank you, Mr. Decker and Ms. Marshak. Andrew Schrank with Highlands Engineering. We've been working with the city on some preliminary plans for this road. And what's being brought forward today is what is called a road diet. I think you guys are all familiar with that. You've gone through a few of those here recently. Essentially looking at a reduction from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, with the center lane being a 2-way left turn lane. And the section of road we're looking at is State Avenue and 8th Street West, basically on State Avenue from the overpass down to the intersection with 8th Street and from A Street at the State Avenue intersection over to where it was reconstructed back in 2017 and 18. I just wanted to go through some of the benefits and misconceptions that may be out there with road diets. We did prepare a few slides that I think have been out there for the public. I don't know if the commissioners have these as well. The top left picture shows just a typical road diet section. So that would be the standard section out there if this road diet is approved. In the back 3 pages just shows some other areas on these roads, some options that we put together for the city on some of the transitions and intersections and how those could be striped. So with that, I'll start talking about some of the benefits of a road diet. A few months back, I think you guys had a presentation talking about holistic roads and how road diets really provide a holistic roadway for pedestrians, for vehicles, and the public using those roads. And that's a great use for the one that was presented, Villard Street. Downtown area, you have a lot of pedestrians in that area. In this case, it's a little bit different type of road. It's on your truck route. It's a more commercial roadway. So maybe not so much a holistic road, although it does still provide those benefits. But some of the other benefits you'll see are shown, again, by this first page. If you look at the remaining 3, top right, bottom left, and bottom right, the amount of reduced conflict points that you see on these roadways really provide a safer route. At all of your intersections, you're almost reducing your conflict points by half. Your visibility is better. You can see traffic better. It really provides a safer route along this roadway. Another benefit is traffic calming. There's many studies out there on traffic calming for road diets with various results. Generally, you can expect, maybe up to a 5 mile per hour speed limit reduction, and maybe up to 7% is another study that's been out there, reduction in speeds. A final benefit I'll present is just a buffer between lanes. On this roadway now, we've got 18-wheelers sharing the road with cars, and they are very close together, 4 feet apart. There's been a history of accidents along this route, speeding along this route, and what we get is a buffer between traffic. It gives you a little more time to make decisions and a little more room to make decisions on this road if you need to. So one thing that's a little weird, we look at this almost as we're going backwards. We're taking a lane out of this roadway. We're reducing the capacity of this roadway. So I want to address that a little bit. Road diets have been proven to work with average daily traffic counts of 15 to 25,000 vehicles. I did look at some of the traffic counts. Most of them are provided from 2017 on the DOT's website. State Avenue in this area, the ADT is around 3,000 to 4,000 generally. Just some comparable ADTs in Dickenson to that so you can get a feel of how much traffic is out there. Villard Street, which is currently 4 lanes, but a road diet will be happening this year. That road has 8,000 to 10,000 vehicles per day. 21st Street West on the north side of Dickenson, 4,000 to 9,000 depending where you're at on that road. 21st Street East was very comparable, about 4,500 vehicles. 10th Avenue East, 5,000 to 7,000. 14th Street East, 2,000 to 4,000. 12th Street West, 3,000 to 6,000. And these are all either 2-lane sections or 2 lanes with a center 2-way left turn lane. Another thing I wanted to address was just travel times. We are going away from being able to pass with this option. So if you do get stuck behind a slower vehicle, there could be some increased time. So if we look at the second page of the handout, we put some various travel times at various speeds for this route. So the first column is for 1 mile, which is basically from the overpass to the 8th Street intersection is 1 mile. So if the speed limit on this road is currently 35, if you get stuck behind somebody going 25 miles an hour, that's about 40 seconds longer to drive that mile. If you want to take the full route from the overpass to Highway 22 is about 1.5 miles. So again, if you were stuck behind a vehicle going 25 and the posted speed is 35, it takes an extra minute to travel this route. So I guess in summary, staff has agreed and would recommend this road diet. We feel it provides a safer, more efficient use of the road that's out there today and could be implemented very affordably with minimal cost to the city as this road needs to be restriped anyways. If there's any questions, I'd certainly be happy to address them.
Any questions for Mr. Schrank?
Mr. Shank, one question I have that I saw seemed to generate a lot of conversation was the bike routes or the bike paths. Is there concern with safety being that this is a truck route for Dickenson?
I'll say yes and no. Typically, it's not recommended to have bike lanes on a truck route, but if we consider what's out there today is a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk, so those bikes today should be sharing a lane with these 18-wheelers. Now, if we implemented this truck route, even if we stripe this as a bike lane or not, it's a shoulder. Those bikes should then be using that shoulder. It would provide a buffer. Even if these bikes are using the sidewalk, the 18-wheelers out there are a few feet away from the sidewalk. This will now put those trucks 8 feet or better away from that sidewalk if the bikes decide to use the sidewalk or pedestrians. So I would say it's a safer alternative than what it is today. The only other option would be to construct a shared use path, a 10-foot wide bike lane out there, which would be, potentially millions of dollars to implement that path along this entire route.
I just looking at this, I know there's a bike route on the south side of this route, a bike lane on the south. I don't see anybody ever using that as a bike. They're gonna stay on the sidewalk.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's not conducive to people just driving on that side of the road, especially with the heavy traffic. And I have never seen anybody on a bike actually on that asphalt. They're always on the sidewalk. So.
Mr. President, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How often would you say that public opinion comes into play when you guys are making your recommendations to municipalities in regards to road diets and how they move forward with that?
That's a tough one. With road diets, there's not clear-cut guidance for when a road diet should be in place. With number of lanes, with how long a turn lane should be, we can use traffic studies and we can calculate what that needs to be. With a road diet, there's not clear guidelines saying whether or not this should be implemented. So all we really have to go off of is previous studies and past history with road diets. And I'll just say they really are becoming a trend throughout the nation. It's happening a lot of different places. They serve a lot of benefits. So I don't think it's a bad idea if the public has some input here because it's not cut and dry for road diets.
I have another question.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
I've seen a lot of conversation in regards to the agriculture industry, specifically the grain trucks that are utilizing this road to offload their product. Can you tell me, do you see a significant challenge for them in reducing that lanes from 4 to 2?
No, I guess I would argue that they may have additional space because we are now allowing them to utilize the shoulder, the driving lane, and potentially the two-way left turn lane, which will extend into the opposing lane. So unless there's a vehicle waiting to turn, which they could wait for, they probably have even greater width to get some of those vehicles through than they would in today's 4-lane section.
You're talking if there's an oversized load, not.
Correct. I think that's what you're referencing, unless I'm misunderstanding the
I think she
question.
was referring to like just a standard grain truck.
Yeah, congestion seemed to be a similar.
Sure. As far as backing up traffic behind that truck, yeah, I guess at that point I would look at this table. What do we expect that grain truck to be traveling? At least 20 miles an hour. So we're losing a minute to follow that grain truck. So that's something to consider. Are the safety benefits of a road diet worth the time that may be lost in those rare circumstances that we are stuck behind a slower moving vehicle?
Thank you.
My input is, let's look at the history of that road. We've had near misses, and we've had misses, and we've had direct hits which resulted in deaths. I think this is a better idea of going for the safety route on this here. And I always, if there's an error, I'll err on the side of safety. As far as the agriculture trucks, it's not going to be an issue. It's like every other situation in town where we move stop signs. I think there's going to be thousands of wrecks there and so on. We haven't had one wreck when you remove these stop signs that you know what I'm talking about. You know, so will they like it at first? No. If they were against it, they're going to say, oh, it's terrible. But we know in the long run, just from when we do things like this here, after a while, you can't find anyone that says, that was a bad thing. You know, so, again, I'm going to vote for the road diet. You know, it's just, it'll make that road a lot safer.
President Decker, I'd just like to comment from the engineering department on some of your questions is that, again, like Commissioner Steiner mentioned, there's a lot of history there, and we've had lots of discussions over the years on how to handle some of that with the excessive speed, like Mr. Schrank mentioned, and some of the accidents. You know, we've installed guardrail and other things trying to make this a safer route, and we do have lots of large loads. In fact, when 85 was closed, I think President Decker and maybe some of the rest of you have gotten calls about these large road loads that had come through our community, and so going this route is what we had looked into as probably the best bet for our community, and that's why we are supporting this road diet.
Well, this is, unless commissioners have any more questions or comments, this is a public hearing, so. Any more questions for Mr. Schrank or Mrs. Marshak? No. Okay. We'll open up the public hearing.
Would you like to give them the phone number again?
Yes.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
The phone number to call in for the public hearing, it'd be 701-456-7006. If you have any public comments or input on the State Avenue striping.
I think our number may have been, I'm just saying, may have been hijacked from what I just heard when I pushed the.
The conference is currently empty.
Oh, no.
You will hear silence or music on hold when connected.
So again, for the listening public, viewing public, 456-7006. If you have any comments on the State Avenue restriping proposal. Anyone from the public here would like to come forward? Cleared out here, so. Again, anyone from the public that is viewing or listening, you may call in. The line is open, and that is again 456-7006. We'll give it a couple minutes. How much of a delay are we on? Or are we live? Live? Okay, so there's no delay.
As opposed to dead.
As opposed to dead, yes. So.
We're a live audience.
Well,
now.
there's some lives with the delay. Just, you know, we gotta be careful in case you start dropping words there, Carson. So watch out, so Desiree can bleep you out back there. Well, we're approaching the 2-minute mark, and I don't think anybody's going to call in. We'll give it to 2 minutes, and then that'll be it. All right, I will close the public hearing.
To transfer, press 1. To send to voicemail, press 2. To disconnect, press 3.
Okay, commissioners, any other comments, questions for staff on this subject of the State Avenue restriping?
Mr. President, the only comment I have really is, you know, I did put this out to the public to get some feedback, and I think that's very important to hear what people have to say, and I was really looking for something with substance. What is your argument for wanting to keep South States a 4-lane? And most of it was convenience, and they just said, leave it alone. There's nothing wrong with it. But there wasn't really any arguments that really made me think differently about this project. And I think Commissioner Frederick has said this before. We pay professionals to do this sort of work, to give us the best directives with the education experience they have. And at this point, even though I know it's a fairly unpopular move, I would be in favor of following the recommendation from our engineering department and Highlands Engineering.
Are you putting that in a motion?
Yes, sure.
All right.
Well,
We
I
have a
would second
motion
that.
to restripe to the advice of our engineering in Highlands, which would take it to a 2-lane with a center passing and 2 bike lanes. Basically sums it up. Road diet, to the road diet. So we have a motion to move forward with that from Commissioner Trustum.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Steiner. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mrs. Trustum.
Aye.
Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mr. Frederick.
Aye.
Ms. Walla.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion carries. There is also the public comments not on the agenda. Again, 456-7006.
Conference is currently empty. You will hear silence or music on when connected.
Anyone wishes to discuss any items that are not on the agenda? Anyone? We'll give this a minute, minute and a half, in case somebody calls in. Anyone from the public? Seeing there is no one from the public has any concerns that are not on our agenda, we'll end the public hearing, public comment section for this evening. I think we have finished everything else up. Rezoning was, we're gonna have that item. Commissioners, last item on the agenda this evening. Do you have any items that weren't on the agenda you wish to discuss?
I just have a comment. Going back to the Odyssey Theater thing, I just want to make a comment regarding that. I think that I'm very disappointed actually in our decision here tonight, and I'm not afraid to say it. I think that we missed a golden opportunity to develop our downtown, to bring a business in, to expand our tax base, which we say is totally lacking, and we decided to pass on it over parking. It's unfortunate. I think that it gives a signal to the rest of the world that Dickenson maybe isn't open for business, that we would rather have a parking lot downtown than a $4.5 million building. And I'm just flabbergasted at the decision. I am 100% pro-business in this town, and it just baffles me that we would not grant somebody an extension with all the things that are going on right now in the world for another 6 or 8 months. It's just baffling to me. I respect everybody's decision. I just don't understand it. And I think, it's very disappointing. That's all I have to say.
Well, I feel that there is no reason that that land cannot go back up for sale, and that they want to repurchase it and start over. They have the opportunity like everybody else. They have plans drawn up. We'll put her back on the market. It's not gonna sit there as a parking lot. That was our original intention from the get-go,
Wow.
is to develop from the downtown.
Well, if that intention was, I think, discussed prior to this public hearing, maybe maybe the public would have had a little bit more to say, but I think they feel that our decision tonight was, we're making this a parking lot, period, because we worry about, that's what we need to do. So I don't think that anybody in that audience understood that intention, so.
It is what it is.
Well, and Mr. President, Commissioner Frederick, you know, I put a recommendation out there and it didn't seem to have any appeal. So, you know, the decision I made was based on that. And I stand by that, even though it was a very difficult one. But I don't disagree with President Decker. I think if we decide as a commission, or if this decision need to wait till the next commission is sworn in, I think that that's a possibility, and we could look at that.
We have multiple properties that need to go up for sale. I've stated this for months. We have a corner lot sitting down on, across from the brick house, that needs to go up for sale. It does not need to be a doggy park. So we have decisions that we have to make going forward that can develop the downtown. It's just that I know that I get tired of being misled. And it's not just them. By a lot of the developers that we have bent over backwards, and then we continuously get egg on our face as a commission. And we've tried to get these people to move forward. And all we want them to be is honest brokers. I'm sorry. Just be honest with us. But we can't even get that.
To that, I feel he was pretty sincere. I mean, and I understand his investment. I mean, I think the nail's in the coffin on this one. So even if we put it back up for sale, I don't see them coming back to the table. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but why would they?
Well, we'll see.
I mean, why would they make that effort? So, like I said, I think if at the beginning of that public hearing, the understanding, if everybody in the crowd understood that we're going to resell that lot for another development, I think the tone would have changed quite a bit.
I guess I've said that in the past. That needs to be developed. I've never said that it's going to remain a parking lot. You know that. We've had that conversation. Yeah. So, okay. So, anything else, commissioners, that are not on the agenda? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.